If I could sit down with my 25-year-old self for just 10 minutes, I could probably save him 10 years of financial mistakes. Not because I'd tell him which stock to buy, not because I'd tell him how to start a business, and definitely not because I'd hand him some secret formula for becoming rich. I'd tell him 5 truths about money that nobody ever told me. Truths that took decades to learn. Truths that cost me stress, mistakes, sleepless nights, and millions of dollars in avoidable detours. And the strange thing is this: none of these lessons are really about money. They're about freedom, because that's what wealth actually is. Most people spend their lives chasing money. Very few spend their lives understanding what money is supposed to do for them. And that misunderstanding quietly shapes every financial decision they make. It certainly shaped mine. The first lesson came from one of the dumbest purchases I ever made. When I was 26 years old, I bought a car I couldn't afford. Not a supercar, not something outrageous, just a car that was far beyond what I should have been driving at that stage of my life. The payments hurt, the insurance hurt, the maintenance hurt. But every morning when I pulled into the office parking lot, I felt successful for about 30 seconds. Then the feeling disappeared, and the payment remained, month after month. Nobody tells you this when you're young. The excitement of buying something lasts days. The bill lasts years. At the time, I thought I wanted the car. What I actually wanted was the feeling, the approval, status, signal. I wanted other people to see me differently. And once I realized that, I started noticing it everywhere. People weren't buying products. They were buying identities. The luxury car wasn't transportation. It was proof. The designer clothes weren't fabric. They were validation. The expensive apartment wasn't a shelter. It was a statement. Everyone was trying to tell a story about themselves through the things they owned, including me. And that's when I discovered something fascinating. The people who look wealthy and the people who are wealthy are often not the same people. Some of the richest people I've ever met looked surprisingly ordinary. No luxury logos, no flashy cars, and no desperate need to impress anyone. Meanwhile, some of the people trying hardest to appear successful were quietly drowning in debt. Because real wealth isn't about appearances. Real wealth is options. The freedom to leave a job you hate. The freedom to start something new. The freedom to take risks. The freedom to say no. And every unnecessary financial obligation quietly steals some of that freedom. That's the first rule of wealth. Don't buy things to impress people. Buy freedom. Because freedom compounds. Status doesn't. Years later, I met an old farmer. One afternoon, I asked him a question. Do you ever wish you had done something bigger with your life? He smiled and said something I've never forgotten. If I miss one planting season, I don't lose 1 year. I lose everything that year could have become. At first, I thought he was talking about farming. He wasn't. He was talking about time. And suddenly I realized something. Every year in your 20s is a planting season. Every skill you learn, every habit you build, every relationship you develop, every opportunity you pursue, they're all seeds. The problem is that seeds don't look impressive when you first plant them. The first workout doesn't transform your body. The first investment doesn't make you rich. The first book doesn't change your life. The first attempt doesn't make you an expert. And because results are invisible at first, most people quit. What they don't understand is that compounding is invisible before it's obvious. The biggest rewards arrive long after most people have already given up. That's why your 20s matter so much. Every decision compounds. Your habits compound. Your health compounds. Your knowledge compounds. Your relationships compound. Even your thinking compounds. The question is simple. Are they compounding in your favor or against you? Because whether you're intentional or not, the clock is compounding something. And one day you'll either be grateful for what you planted or regret what you neglected. In my late 20s, I became obsessed with investing. I read annual reports, studied markets, watched financial television, looked for the perfect investment. And then I spent $3,000 on a public speaking course. At the time, honestly, I resented it. $3,000 felt like money I was throwing away, especially when I could have put it in the market. But within 18 months of finishing that course, I had landed 2 consulting contracts that I never would have won before. The course returned more than 20 times what I paid for it. No stock had ever done that for me. Around the same time, a mentor asked me a question. What is your best investment? I immediately started talking about stocks. He stopped me. No. I mentioned a business opportunity. Again, he shook his head. Then he pointed directly at me. Your best investment is sitting right there. And the speaking course proved him right, because the greatest asset you'll ever own is not your portfolio. It's your ability to create value. A stock can crash, a property can lose value, an industry can disappear, technology can change everything. But if you can solve problems, learn quickly, communicate effectively, build relationships, and adapt to change, opportunities keep finding you. The market may change, but valuable people remain valuable. That's where many young people make a huge mistake. They spend hundreds of hours researching investments, but almost no time to improve themselves. They obsess over increasing portfolio returns by a few percentage points, while ignoring the possibility of doubling their earning power. Your earning power is the engine. Everything else comes later. And the earlier you invest in that engine, the more powerful it becomes. Then, life taught me something even more important. I lost nearly 40% of everything I had built. Years of progress disappeared. For a while, I thought I'd failed. I thought I'd never recover. But eventually, I realized something. The money was gone. The person who created the money wasn't. The skills remained. The discipline remained. The relationships remained. The experience remained. And those assets turned out to be far more valuable than the money itself. 5 years later, I had rebuilt everything. Not because I became a better investor, because I became a stronger person. That's when I noticed a pattern. The people who create lasting wealth don't avoid setbacks. They recover from them faster because they understand something most people don't. Your financial future is less dependent on what happens to you and more dependent on who you become when it happens. But the most important lesson was still waiting for me, and it came from a hospital room. Several years later, I sat beside one of the most successful men I had ever known. He had built companies, made millions, earned recognition, achieved everything society tells us to chase. Yet as we talked, I realized something was deeply wrong. He wasn't afraid of dying. He was afraid of regret. Eventually, he looked out the window and asked me, "Do you know the phrase that ruined my life?" I shook my head. He smiled sadly. "Just a few more years." Then he explained, "When my children were young," I said, "just a few more years. When my business was growing," I said, "just a few more years. When my wife wanted to travel," I said, "just a few more years." Then he paused and quietly said, "The few more years never ended." The room went silent because deep down I understood exactly what he meant. I had been doing the same thing, always preparing for life, always postponing life, always believing happiness existed somewhere beyond the next achievement. So, let's bring everything together. Lesson 1. Stop buying the appearance of wealth. Real wealth is options, not objects. Lesson 2. Time is your most valuable asset. Every year compounds, whether you're intentional or not. Lesson 3. Invest in the person creating the money. Skills, discipline, character, Those assets survive every market crash. Lesson 4. Setbacks are temporary. The person you become lasts. And lesson 5. Never sacrifice your entire life for a future that isn't guaranteed. Because wealth without life isn't wealth at all. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this video, it's this. The goal isn't simply to become wealthy. The goal is to become wealthy without losing the things that matter most along the way. Take care of your money, take care of your time, and most importantly, take care of the person who has to manage both. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these 5 lessons hit closest to home? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this video made you think differently about money, share it with someone in their 20s who needs to hear it. The best time to plant a seed was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. I'll see you in the next one.